And we are joined by a guest today.
We are Robyn Lawrence.
Hi.
Yes. Robyn, do you think you can pull your chair up? I think
And I am elevated. All right.
Give us a juicy insight. We'll elevate your
And if she messes up, just love her.
This is The Naturalist. In every episode, we're covering the products, ideas, and trends that are shaping the CPG industry.
Or that we just really like.
So why are you shook today? I'm shook today because it's Mickey's birthday. So I went to get him a breakfast burrito this morning, and I went into Black Belly because they opened a Black Belly in Denver.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, by our house. I went in to get it, picked it up really quickly, came back out to my car, and someone was outside of his car and kind of looking at mine and was like, "Oh no, is this your car? I hit it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, and so he looks at it. He looked at it. I didn't look at it. He looks at it and reports the damage back to me and says, "Oh, I bent your license plate." And I'm like, "Oh, fine. No big deal."
Yeah.
But then I don't double check that.
Well, it is 4 degrees outside.
It's very cold, as we've established. But so I just leave. I go back, realize my whole bumper is cracked. Oh, no. And then, when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, he was right. It is a little tiny bent license plate." And then all of the other damage. So I don't know.
Hope it was a good burrito.
He said it was good.
Happy birthday, Mickey!
Yeah, so that's what happened today. But now I'm here.
And we have a great guest today, Robyn Lawrence.
Hi. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Is this your first time on?
I was on once last year.
I was going to say, I feel like we've done this before.
Talking about women's stuff.
We talk about a lot of
Products.
women's stuff here.
And now you're back to talk
I'm
about
happy to be back.
women's stuff and men's
Women's stuff and men's stuff, yeah.
But before we get to that, we'll update on our tariffs conversation from last episode. So it's interesting. We did get some members of the community responding and saying how the tariffs could impact them. And a lot of people have written in, one, that said mainly packaging was going to be the biggest issue for them. And we are hearing a lot of that just from the community, is that, people have brought a lot of supply chain work and sourcing of ingredients closer to home, but that packaging, particularly with the updates and announcements around aluminum and steel, those will be pretty big issues, particularly aluminum in our beverages and lots of different categories to be affected by that. So keep the comments and feedback coming, because as we continue to cover this issue and its impact on the CPG industry, we would love to really understand some of the areas that will be most impactful for you and your business. So.
Yeah, and just adding to that, another thing that we've been kind of keeping tabs on that isn't totally clear at this point, especially with the organic produce network, is the situation with the USDA grants, that the halt on those grants right now that could potentially have a big impact on the organic industry, on our industry. So that's something else that we're trying to kind of stay on top of.
And how about poppy, speaking of which? And not just poppy, but first of all, interesting to see how many CPG companies and natural and organic companies that we know advertise during the Super Bowl, which is just kind of a shift that we've been seeing over the years, as more and more of these types of conscious or natural and organic product companies making big investments. And that just shows the size of these companies now. But there were some controversial ads, right? And poppy was one of them. So
I didn't watch the Super Bowl.
You didn't watch the Super Bowl.
Well, because when I lived in Spain, we couldn't get the Super Bowl, and I was there for so long that we would just have Super Bowl parties every year, but we couldn't get the game, so I would just download the game from the previous year and put it on the background as ambiance.
Brilliant.
I really, it's all about the food.
I have to admit, I didn't watch the Super Bowl.
You didn't watch it either, did you? Download last year.
For this conversation, I at least thought I could get you on the commercials, but
I used to cover advertising way back when, and that was everybody would gather around for the commercials and not watch the game.
But yeah, it is interesting to see the different marketing tactics, and particularly bringing influencer marketing into that. Mm-hmm. And I think that companies that, again, are trying to create better for you or better for the planet product are probably under another level of scrutiny. Okay. Now to the main event, the Super Bowl of our podcast today, which is chatting with you about a great report that NBJ just released over the past couple of weeks, right? Mm-hmm. Sexual health report.
Yep. Sexual and reproductive health is the proper name of the report. It's a really interesting report for so many reasons. I think one is that this is the first time we've ever done it. And I think it's the first time we've ever done it because there's always been so much stigma around this subject and everybody's been a little scared of it. So it says a lot even that it's even out there.
I agree. That's huge. And we've talked about sexual health, reproductive health, women's health products, all these things a lot. But to see NBJ and your team really like developing this whole comprehensive report around the market, where it is now, where it's going, that's a big step for the industry.
It is. And it's just had the stigma. It's been kind of, the sexual health products were kind of at the bottom shelf and you were kind of embarrassed to ask for them. And, they were always very male performance oriented, and that is changing so much. And I think that's what we found so much in this report is that it's changing because the consumer's changing.
Yeah.
And consumers, and especially given this is a lot being driven by Gen Z and by millennials and younger millennials who are learning about how important sexual wellness is to their overall wellness. And how much it integrates into just overall well-being. So it's not this like, I'm going to, pop this boner pill and then I'm going to be better. It's become really, you said I could say it.
Definitely give you for me.
That was the hardest part of writing this one was like not too many innuendos, but just enough to keep it fun. But anyway, but I do think, so this has become, a very much like, people are taking control, really agency over their sexual health in ways that they hadn't before. And that's why we're seeing this market grow. And that's what we're seeing, especially that it's growing among younger generations. Mm-hmm. One of the really interesting things that we found was boomers don't think they have any sexual concerns or health issues. They were actually 83% of the boomers in our consumer surveys said they have no concerns.
But maybe they just didn't want to talk about it.
I think that's a big part of, with that generation.
Are boomers. Yeah. I mean, my mom would say she's just at the tail end, not really a boomer. But, that was definitely like the way that we talked about sex growing up was kind of like leave this Time magazine article about teen pregnancy on your bed, Yeah. Like there was not a lot of conversation. So maybe it was just... No, everything's fine because I don't want to talk about this. I'm not comfortable talking about this.
But then you said that Gen Z and millennials are like, oh, we're taking this survey.
Well, they're talking about it. They're interested. They're getting a lot of information. I thought it was really interesting from men. Almost a third of men are getting their information about sexual health and wellness from podcasts. Oh. So the manosphere is real, whether you like it or not. And it is, hopefully giving them good information. And I think it is because what we are also finding is that there's a pretty sophisticated level of understanding. We found that 49% of men and 55% of women have had their hormone levels tested in the last year, which is massive.
Shocking number. So explain what that is. What does that mean?
And I think a big part of it is because now you can do it at home. So you can get at-home tests and
across ages.
No, it's different. It's being really driven by younger men.
Okay,
but it's being driven more by Gen X women, which makes sense because they're probably menopause, and that's So there's like the Dutch test that you can take at home. Which makes it, just makes it easy.
Right, this
I'll give it to you after that. Okay. But anyway, but so what we're seeing is that they're not just testing, it's like, oh man, well, they're all testing for testosterone. They're not. I was so shocked with that. Number one for men was cortisol. They're testing for cortisol. So really understanding that cortisol is kind of this big one when everything kind of cascades down from there, and that affects the testosterone.
Is that stress related?
That's the stress hormone. Oh, exactly. Which, given the culture that we're in right now, I guess not super shocking, but I think super shocking that they're testing it in the context of sexual wellness.
Definitely making those connections.
Yeah.
I have a question. How reliable is hormone testing, because I was talking to a friend of mine in Spain and she said, oh no, here doctors don't test estrogen because they're like, no, it's up and down, up and down, up and down. It's not reliable. So they don't do it ever. And that's just the thing. So, I mean, I just always have that curiosity. You're like cortisol, if that's something that changes with your stress levels.
It does.
How reliable are those tests, or what are the more reliable hormone tests?
Well, I think Dutch test is a great one because you do it all day long.
Oh, okay.
Right. So, it really does. So every hour you are, testing again, and you test from your saliva. So
that's interesting, though, alone that like that type of like that requires a level of consumer engagement, commitment, engagement. And so showing like people are really in it. They want to get to know their bodies. They're putting in the work. I would imagine it's not cheap.
It's not cheap at all. It's like $400 or $500.
So a question for you then. So we're seeing consumers, at least Gen Z and millennials, Gen X to a certain degree, they're taking action. They're committing to learning more about these issues, about their bodies, talking about it more to a certain degree. Does that translate to sales of products, supplements, for example, that are addressing these needs?
It is. It's definitely a category that's growing. It's not growing insanely, but it is definitely growing very steadily. And we're seeing a much different level of products, right? We're seeing products that are geared toward women. We're seeing products that are, one of the most, we're seeing products for, a lot of the times it used to be the products for women were, UTIs or, that kind of thing. And now we're starting to see products that are women's satisfaction, performance, libido. Huge one. So we're really seeing a change in the products as much as we're seeing the growth of the market. It is growing, but it's growing to, it's still a pretty small part of the overall supplement market. It's about 3%.
Do you think that it'll just be time, like first comes like awareness, understanding, conversation,
for sure,
and then we'll see more and more kind of demand and actual purchasing of the products?
And this is another one where I'd say we're right at the very beginning of the conversation, sort of like women's health a couple of years ago, right? There was conversation that had to precede it. And, a lot of people came in and they were like, but the market's not just like exploding at the same level as the conversation. It's like, it just takes time to catch up.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's so inspiring, though. I mean, just thinking about, the things that you mentioned, sexual pleasure, performance, libido, all those things are about agency rather than like UTI just feels like a reactive, post-sexual treatment.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I'm really envious of younger generations of women that have this incredible agency and this ability to talk about these, taboo topics.
And I think that, social media has been a huge one there. And I think podcasts have too. They've really, opened up where people are just like, oh, hey, this isn't something to be ashamed of.
I mean, I never thought we'd say boner peeled in this podcast, but here we are.
We're at 3.
Okay, we reached the boner pill limit. That was 4.
Okay, so I think another interesting thing about this is just conversations that are happening around healthcare and healthcare systems. I think fertility specialists and fertility systems have kind of been a focus of many conversations. And I think people are starting to question some of those things, especially these like parts of our healthcare system that are making a lot of money and kind of put people on very similar protocols. And I think some of this market is a reaction to that of saying, is this really the right path? Did you see any of that in your survey or reporting?
I did. And I think one of the really interesting things is how popular and how dominating herbal formulas are within this. So I feel like there's really this combination of people are going to the techno things, especially the monitoring and all of that and the testing, but then they're going back to Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine for some of the solutions. And we're actually seeing like turkey tail is showing up in IVF clinics because it can help with, it actually has been proven. There's been studies that show that it can make for better results. So we're starting to see this really cool kind of like combination of the ancient and the modern, but people are picking what's working for them and what they believe in.
So it's like the personalization piece is in there too.
Which the personalization piece is so huge here, I think. Especially if I were a supplement company right now, I would be partnering with Dutch Test and, finding a way to offer people after they get their results from this, personalized protocols, right? I mean, that just makes complete sense. And there's privacy issues with that and all the rest. And
Right.
But it's coming.
What are some of your other? It's coming. What are some of your other provocative puns? What are some of your other predictions about what's next for this category?
I think one of the biggest things is that people are taking a really holistic and really integrated approach to their sexual wellness. So it's not, again, just popping that pill, but it is, pharma was way down on the list when we asked, like, what do you do to take care of your health, your sexual health? And exercise was top for both men and women, and diet was second. So I think that's huge,
Interesting,
right?
yeah.
I mean, so people aren't saying, I just want something to take care of these symptoms, but they're really understanding, like, when I keep myself in shape, my sexual health is also, going to benefit. So I think there's a flexibility to all of it too that we just talked about. It's the ancient and the modern. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's people. Probably they will take pharma when it is necessary, but that's not what they're turning to first, which I think is exciting for our industry.
The flexitorgasm. I just made that up.
It's really good. You should trademark that one. Moving on.
Okay. Any ingredients stand out specifically in products that are showing up to address sexual and hormonal health?
Yeah. So, and combination herbal formulas, as I said earlier, are just dominating. So they're like, sales of those are like 6 times higher than anything else. So it's just people want kind of the old school, what you would go to a TCM doctor and they would give you your formula, right? Or an Ayurvedic doctor. So I think that's really interesting.
Is practitioner, sorry to jump in, but is practitioner channel a big one for that too? As in like acupuncturists and these, I would imagine that's
it's a big driver of that one. Although DTC is definitely the biggest one, which makes sense, right? People want to order these things from the privacy of their own house.
Yeah.
So that's not surprising. Again, herbal. Most of the things that are exciting are herbal, and they're also mood enhancing. So we're seeing maca and ashwagandha are right up there in the top 5. And so again, it's that understanding that mood and sexual health are related and have a lot of things to have to do with each other, and going kind of bi-directional, right? So if you're in the mood, you perform better, and if you're, if you perform better, you're in a better mood. So, all of that is working together, but really understanding that mood and mental health has a lot to do with sexual wellness. What's really interesting to me is saw palmetto. It is it's kind of really an up and coming one, and that's always been the prostate. Right. That's, what men take when they're worried about the prostate. And now they're finding that it works for so many new, other things. So it's working for menopause and hormone balancing. And actually people are starting to take for PCOS. So we're really seeing, so that one is really an up and coming. Probiotics are another one that, again, we saw it really start to happen for, vaginal infections, things like that. But now we're starting to see that for hormone balancing. And,
interesting.
Yeah, managing menopause. You're starting to see probiotics show up in fertility clinics. So that's one that just you wouldn't have thought of in the sexual wellness.
Yeah, I was not aware of that,
right?
Until I know that connection.
And these, it's still very, very small, but mushrooms are, mushrooms are, have a lot, so they've got cordyceps, which is called Himalayan Viagra by a lot of people. So, kind of cordyceps for stamina, chaga, and that's just because of its stress reduction properties. Is being used a lot. Lion's mane for vitality, another one. And turkey tail, which we talked about earlier, which is starting to see in fertility.
Super interesting.
So, not what you would expect, which I think is, all of the kind of, horny goat weed and, all of those they're kind of just going back down. Like they're not.
Is there more research and greater investment in these other ingredients, or how do you think?
I think that's starting to happen. Yeah. Yes.
So they had a clinical.
They're starting to have.
They're starting to have.
Right. They're starting to. I think probably mushrooms less so. Mushrooms are really reliant on ancient wisdom to an extent because they're so huge in traditional Chinese medicine in these roles, but. There's, things that are happening within the functional mushroom industry where they're going to start making more science happen. So we're going to see that. But for sure, like saw palmetto, the studies they're doing on women, to me, is really exciting.
I think that's been an interesting trend over the years, has been seeing more. We're seeing more research in ingredients for different functions and purposes and conditions, as well as for different demographics. So really kind of challenging ideas of, oh, no, this ingredient was always used for brain health. So that's kind of where it sits. And then saying, oh, well, actually, we kind of unlocked this whole other opportunity area. So some of the innovation, I think, is tapping into these once perceived kind of single purpose ingredients to be multi-purpose, multifunctional, and multi-demographic kind of driven. So it's cool to see that in this space in particular.
It really is.
And Robyn, you're going to be, if I'm not mistaken, we are just a couple weeks out from Expo West. You're going to be doing a session, an education session on this topic at Expo West. Can you give us a little bit of a sneak preview?
Yes. So it's optimization, or it's optimizing opportunities. Opportunity and optimizing are in the title. We're going to optimize opportunities, but we're going to talk about sexual health from several different angles. So we're going to talk about just traditional sexual health. Hunter Morris, from the founder of Hello Cake, is going to be joining us. We're going to talk about testing and personalization. We're going to be talking about, some of the science behind this and hormonal balancing. And, so we're going to hit it from all directions. And really, this will be part of the, this is on Tuesday, which is Supplement Education Day. So it'll be part of Supplement Education Day. So we will be, really bringing it home to what opportunities is this opening up for supplement ads that are looking to get into this.
Wednesday.
I actually have the information right here. It's Optimizing Sexual and Hormonal Health.
Thank you.
Wellness Solutions for Men and Women. And it is Tuesday, March 4th from 12 to 1 p.m.
It's a great panel. So these guys are all rock stars.
Well, before we wrap up, Robyn, anything else about the report? Maybe something that surprised you or something that you think is particularly interesting for the CPG industry?
I think one thing is that women said that they are very interested and extremely interested in looking for solutions, and they don't know what to take. Like their number one thing was that they need more education on, how these products can work for them and what's available to them and all of that. So I think there's just this massive opportunity out there for marketing and education to women. And so, we're seeing that piece. Women are still only a quarter of this market. And there's just huge room for growth there. I also think, we talked about the baby boomers at the beginning, but I think there's opportunity to bring them in if we can open their minds and get them to see that this isn't, the taboo subject that they were told it was back in the 50s or whatever. So.
I'll start with my mom.
Yeah, let us know your
parents.
Wish me luck.
Stop tonight. Mom, we're going to have a talk now. Maybe you could just start sending her products.
Just leave articles on her bed.
Send your mom anonymous sexual health products. It might be a little alarming, but this was fascinating. People can learn more about the report on nutritionbusinessjournal.com. We also have some great content around it on newhope.com, and it's definitely worth checking out because this is going to be pretty disruptive and very exciting for the supplement industry moving forward. So thanks, Robyn.
Thanks for going. So fun.
Happy birthday, Mickey. Please rate and subscribe.